Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives.
David Gouthro, still David Gouthro, back with another fabulous guest on Discover Fresh Perspectives. Today, my guest is Phil Solman. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, David. Lovely to be here.
So, Phil, we met many, many years ago at something I was running called the Dialogue Group, where a bunch of people just got together and chat. And you've done so many different things in your life. And I'd say all of them, from my experience, have somehow benefited either other people or the planet or both. And today, let's explore something that I happen to know you're incredibly passionate about, which is music. So we could go in so many different directions, but Phil, how did you get passionate about music? Take us back.
Okay, I will take you back to a little geeky boy with fuzzy hair and glasses, 10-year-old in Coventry in the UK, kind of post-industrial city in the UK, who listened to music but I wasn't that drawn to it. It was there. And Top of the Pops was a Thursday night program that all the kids tuned into. And on that particular night, a strange band appeared and it rocked my world. And it's a band that I'm going to say most of your listeners have probably never heard of. But if you're a bit of a muso and kind of my age, you probably will. The band was called Sparks.
Sparks.
Does it mean anything to you, David?
Well, not as music, not in a music context. It's kind of firefighting, it's.
Yeah, no, and that's fine because most people haven't heard of Sparks. But after their appearance on Top of the Pops, which not only blew my mind, it clearly blew the minds of lots of people, they went on to release 2 albums that year in the UK. And there was Sparks Mania in the UK. There were crowds of kids like flattening police officers and stuff like that to get at the band. And they weren't like some boy band or whatever. It was 2 brothers, actually from California, with their British backing band. And I'd never seen anything like it. I'm going to say that they have probably influenced more other bands in their time than many bands have. And this is why bands like Beck and bands like Franz Ferdinand sort of point to them and kind of go, oh my God, that was the band. And what I also love about them, why I'm still excited about Sparks to this day, is in the last few years, they've played the Glastonbury Festival in the UK and they've played the Rose Bowl, I believe it is, in Hollywood, as in headlining. And these guys must now be in their 80s. They've put out about 30 albums and hardly anybody knows them, but they're still doing it. And enough know them that they can do big gigs sometimes.
So let me diverge for just a moment, because, when you said that they influence so many other bands, and it's such a contrast today, where people want to be and hold out a shingle and say, I'm an influencer, and other people come to them because of the influence. And, what I loved about what you described is they didn't come out to be influencers. There's something they did that as an outcome of that,
yes,
they were influencers. So do you have a sense of what it was about them that influenced so many other bands?
I will have to describe it, and I will suggest people do a little search for a song called This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us by Sparks. I think it was 1974. I believe it was. That was when I was 10. And find it on YouTube or something. What you've got, the lead singer is nothing, he's got a curly perm. He's singing in quite a falsetto voice, which was kind of unusual at the time. But it's his older brother sat at the keyboard, who basically, to most people in the UK, looked like Hitler.
Oh,
which is, now he thought he looked like Charlie Chaplin, which makes sense when you think about it. But he sat there like stony faced and sort of just moving his eyes and his hands like almost like a little robot or something. And it was just so odd. And the song had this little beautiful keyboard bit, this bombast, and it was like 3.5 minutes of, like, I have to say, a perfectly crafted pop song that just walloped you. And like I say, I'd heard nothing like it before, and I'm not sure really anybody who watched the program had heard anything like it before. You probably hated it or you loved it. I loved it. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people across the UK loved it. And there was Beatlemania, but it was Sparks mania for 6 months before the band decided after their second album, the two brothers actually just wanted to go back to California. So off they go.
So Phil, what did Sparks spark in you? What path did that lead you on?
It meant that instead of my pocket money going to sweeties, which would be candy for the North American audience, seriously, it went to vinyl records. It, immediately, it was like, I'm saving my money. I'm going to the record store, and that was the path. It was as soon as you become the person who your money is going on records, and Sparks were the first, but after that there were lots of others, and it was just like, this is what I'm doing. And the other thing about this particular band was the lyrics. It was Ron, the older brother, the keyboard player, the very odd one, who wrote very interesting and complex lyrics, often funny, quirky. And that got me into trying to write lyrics myself. It got me into messing around with musical instruments myself. Later on, it got me into thinking I could be in a band because, I'm a boring geek at school and I might actually get a girlfriend if I'm in a band. So, but the music was always the thing that actually drove it. There was that other thing about it would be nice to get a girlfriend. I have to admit that one.
So that's what it got you thinking about. So what did you actually do with what you were thinking about?
I suppose more than anything, it's just that so much of my thoughts were about music. What I've since learned, because I love studying things like the human brain. I'm a big fan of reading David Eagleman, neuroscientist, learning about the human brain. I think, at that age, my brain became this thing that was focused on audio pretty much above all else. And it means that there are so often songs in my head, either my own or somebody else's, and sound is so important to me that I'm aware other senses are way less important. And so it actually shaped me as a physical being. Years later, I discovered that I have no flavor memory.
Oh,
and that only came up during that period of time with my darling wife ran a food magazine, and she'd say to me, does this one taste better than the one I made for you a week ago? And I'd go, how would I know that? And she'd say, well, what did the other one taste like? And I said, how am I supposed to remember that? I'm just saying that because songs and music and melody and all that is in here all the time, because that's what my brain is attuned to. I learned that taste, I don't remember it. The good news there is I enjoy taste, and it means I can enjoy a strawberry like the first time they come round. But ask me to describe what a strawberry tastes like. No.
So I'm just, I have to excuse me when my mind goes in a bunch of different directions. One of the things that occurred to me, isn't it interesting that we talk about someone's taste in music?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. And, my taste in music, I suppose, also then it happened, in later decades to coincide with kind of doom and gloom. The 80s, bands like The Cure and Joy Division and kind of the doomy squad and stuff like that, which probably colored who I was as a young man then, quite cynical, quite depressed and things. Although I have to say, I would also blame Margaret Thatcher for a lot of that, but the music obviously didn't help. But what also happened is that at around 15, there was an explosion of music in my hometown, which again added to this thing of music is really important. And that was when there were things like race riots happening in the UK, and a band called The Specials came out of Coventry, my hometown, when I was 15. And they brought their label, they had their own record label, was called Two Tone, and everything on it was black and white. and the members of the band were black and white. And
Okay.
this was when I was starting to have my eyes open to the politics, whether it with a big P or a small P of music. So as well as loving the music, it started to then draw me into that music can be more than just music. It can have an importance beyond music. And they were a very political band.
Like again, this is triggering so many memories for me, Phil. And one of them back in the days of like the Vietnam War and a bunch of others, protest songs came out.
Yeah.
Right. And like I still remember One Tin Soldier and some of these other kinds of things that really make you stop to think, and the ability to transform the way that people think about things. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, I just want to check out this assumption that when you're listening to music, you listen attentively. It's not like a background thing for you focusing on. Is that true?
Most of the time, yeah. I don't tend to want music as wallpaper. I tend to want to pay attention.
So here's what I'm wondering, because you've developed that as whether it's a habit or a skill or a preference or whatever, does that translate into how interpersonally you're very good at listening? Like, is there any kind of a connection there?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. What I would say is that I used to talk to my mum a lot. We talked about, we still do. I mean, she's in the UK. When we get on, on the phone, whatever, we talk about all sorts of things. And she once told me, she said, as a kid, probably before the music became the thing, she was worried that I didn't have any hobbies.
Huh.
But then she realized that my hobby was talking.
Oh.
She said, at any sort of get-togethers, whatever, I would always be yak, 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 talking. Now, that doesn't necessarily make you a good listener. I think I've had to teach myself to be a good listener. I think I'm still probably a better talker than I am a listener. So yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a connection there because I think the trying to listen and truly listen to what people are saying is something that I think I delved into a bit later in life, where I really understood that if you want a good life, you got to have good interpersonal skills. You've got to be able to have deep conversations with people, difficult conversations with people, wonderful conversations, and you have to listen. And if you don't listen, it never works.
So the connection I see between music and that is, when it comes to music, first of all, you care about it, right? Yeah. And you focus on it, right? Whereas listening to people, you care for whatever the reason is for having a better life. You care, and that enables you to focus. So, maybe it's not a direct connection, but the need to care about something for it to be important to you enables you to extract whatever you can from either the music or from conversations with people.
And yeah, I can see the logic. Yeah, because sound is so strong and important to me. Probably second only to sight, probably in terms of my senses. Yeah, that I'm going to listen carefully, and I do have to say I'm very flattered that my darling wife will often say, "Oh, you remembered so and so," and I said, "Well, you told me da 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 da," and she's often it's nice. She appreciates that I listen. I don't always remember, but she thinks I twig and notice things that she wouldn't necessarily think I would. So clearly, I am listening.
So what I can imagine one of the conversations might be, yes, I remember that was a wonderful dinner that we had at that restaurant. Don't ask me how it tasted, because
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. I could tell her, I remember the place, and wasn't that when somebody walked in and but I said, if there's an event that happened, but don't ask me to tell you what we ate.
Right.
Yeah. I know I like the restaurant, so I'm going to suggest it was good.
Yeah. So now let's go back to your musical experience. So you thought about wanting to be in a band because you might meet some people and things like that. Did you end up being in a band or multiple bands, Phil?
Yes, I did. Probably at the age of about 15, I finally told my parents, I want to buy, or no, I think I said I'm going to buy an electric guitar, because at that point I'd saved up some money. And they were, I have to say, my parents were smart cookies. They really were, because my dad, he knew how to manage people, and I think he managed this situation well. He said, let's get Tim, who lives up the road, because he's a guitar, and I knew Tim. Yes, he's a rock guitar. Let him come and have a chat with you, so he'll help you make sure you make a good choice on what you buy. That's reasonable. And that's when Tim comes along, he's chatting to me. And, Tim's recommendation is, rather than an electric guitar, I should get an acoustic guitar and learn to play that, because I'll be a better guitarist. And that will be the way to become a better guitarist. I'm sure my dad probably slipped him a tenner or something less, because obviously an acoustic guitar doesn't make quite as much noise as an electric guitar. But it worked, and I became a so-so guitarist. And then at 16, friends at school, we formed a band, and there were already two that played guitar. So I said, well, I'll play bass. It's got fewer songs. It's probably easier.
Yeah.
And and then numerous bands followed. And there was a period of time when one band I was in Coventry, we were attracting pretty big crowds. We were playing, for a local band, pretty good venues, and selling them out, which was lovely. Some interest from record labels down in London that we'd go and visit, but nothing. We weren't good enough, and we weren't really commercial enough. And honestly, having paid attention so much to the music scene, and at this point I was probably 19, 20, something around there, having paid attention to the music scene and been into it so much, read the music newspapers and all the rest of it, and learnt about the stars and the famous people, whatever, I actually absolutely 100% did not want to be famous. So I actually was not wanting to go and sign a big record deal. I know you got to work hard to become famous, but I thought, if I accidentally become famous with a band, I think I'm going to hate this. So, wow. Yeah. Well, you just, if you're into people, I at that time I was probably listening to David Bowie, and and then other artists, and you realize that fame is a heavy lift for most people. And and musicians in bands can be famous, and they can still be pretty broke. So you don't even have money to insulate yourself from the downsides of fame. So I kind of pivoted at that point, and I quit that band, and I got more interested in the sound of music and sound engineering. And I went down to London to do a course in sound engineering. So,
oh, wow. Huh.
Well, that's when I realized it's the sound. I was so obsessed with the sounds and what you could do with sound.
I love that. It's, the part about not wanting to be famous, I myself strive to be mediocre to avoid the challenges of that. And I must say, from a success standpoint, I've been incredibly successful. So let's see, a couple of other things I want to explore. A comment, what music is something that I think you can leave behind and come back to. And the reason I say that, there's one of my former colleagues in a consulting practice, former partner, he used to play in groups when he was younger. And then at 60, he decided he was really missing it. So he went back at 60 to start playing again with a bunch of other folks, and had and still has the best time of his life, because it's about the joy of performing. It's not about the accolades, it's not about the money. It's just being able to express oneself so fully after having to be so careful as a consultant, which is saying in front of your clients and all those other kinds of things, just to let it out there. And if you don't like the music, what's that I see over there? Oh, a door, right? You can exit it, which is really cool. And with a number of other friends, when they've retired or just pre-retired, they've always wanted to sing, but didn't think they had a good voice. Well, they joined a choir and are loving that, just being part of something. It's part of the social aspect of it, the community aspect of the expression. We're always so careful about what we say. It's like we have these steel bands around our arms and chest, and to feel those removed and be able to fully express oneself, like breathes new life into people, both on the performing side. I remember One of my colleagues was a deacon at Christ Church Cathedral, and he was remarking through COVID, talking to the choir about just how much pain they felt not being able to sing for people.
Yes.
It's incredible, and you don't have to have a good voice. It's one thing that just to express yourself.
Yeah.
So, Phil, there's a couple of other things I want to ask you about, and because you talk about, well, some questions. So, what's the impact? What are the concerns? What are the joys that you see about the impact of artificial intelligence? No, first of all, social media on music, and then let's jump to AI
Okay.
and music.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, obviously, when I started out, there were a lot of gatekeepers to getting your music heard. So, and that's just the way it was. So we would save up money as a band, pay to go into a local studio, spend hundreds of pounds, which, we didn't really have. And then we'd tout this cassette round to the local radio stations. But the good news was if they wanted to play it, they'd actually pay you. They'd pay you, some 30, 40, 50 pounds, whatever. It was something. There was some money coming back. So, and then you'd go down to the record companies in London and talk to them. Some guy in this there would listen to you kind of, and then stop it, and off you go. So there was all these gatekeepers. And what I would say is what the internet and social media has done, which I think is the plus, is it's removed most of the gatekeepers. Certainly not all of them, but most of them. So that if you happen to be able to create fascinating, intriguing music that touches people, music that inspires people, music that people want to listen to, you can get it out now in a way that you simply didn't have the option previously. So that's great. When I came back to music, which for me was my late 50s, just when the pandemic had hit.
So, sorry, Phil, just how long a gap was there before you came back, approximately?
The gap was probably 12 or 13 years, and the gap existed because of owning and running Edible Vancouver and Wine Country magazine, which had to be a complete full-on thing. So, but yes, after selling that in 2019, which is a good time to sell a business, I have to say, moving to Penticton because my wife, she's my Okanagan sweetheart. We lived in East Vancouver when we were together, but she wanted to come back to the Okanagan, and I don't have any problem moving to the Okanagan. It was like pandemic hit, and so I'm not starting a new business. I'm not sure what I'm doing, but one thing I can do, as well as work on the house and do all that kind of stuff that I'm allowed to do, I can get back into music, and the gatekeepers have gone. Because now I could pay, I think it was like $20 US, and my songs get released on all of the platforms you can imagine.
Wow.
And that's as many songs as I want to release in a year. And it's like $20 and I can reach the world. Now, in a way, that's brilliant. But on the downside, obviously, now you're competing against millions and millions and millions of other people. And so mostly you get overlooked because even if your music's good, even if, whatever, there's so much of it now. So on the one hand, it's great. It's democratized access for creatives to get their stuff out there in a way that didn't exist when I was young. You had to be spotted by the right person at the right time who was prepared to spend the money and all the rest of it. But also, just like the internet, there's so much of everything. How do you find the good stuff? It's a challenge. So yeah, that's how social media has changed. I'd say generally good, but obviously with caveats behind that.
So how important, and thinking back to, I had a podcast conversation with Melanie Decker, who's a wonderful singer-songwriter, just an amazing human being, and about how important it is to her, for her to have live performance. And in terms of differentiating yourself from everything that's being pushed out on social media, where do you see live performance fitting in? Is it necessary? Is it nice to have? What difference does it make?
I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge. It's one of the odd things. Apart from one little special, I actually don't do live performance anymore. And it's simply that, I create music solo most of the time. It's just the way I kind of work now. But I couldn't perform it solo. And I did all my live stuff when I was a younger man. I drove all over the country, got home in the early hours of the morning, all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure I could still enjoy it, but it's like it's not a high priority. But I would say for most people who are doing music today, if you can't do live or you don't want to do live, it will limit the likelihood of you getting any kind of meaningful audience.
If that's something that's important to you.
Exactly.
If it's about having that feedback loop, or I'm just fine just putting it out there. I don't care if anyone listens, I'm doing it just for me.
Yeah. And I fall somewhere between that. Ultimately I do it for me, but it is nice to get the feedback, but I'm also aware everything's a trade-off. Everything's a trade-off. I could invest way more time on social media to try and raise my profile as a musician, but it's not important enough for me. And I've got other things in my life that are more important, but the making of the music, the working on the sounds, the crafting of it, the songwriting and producing and remixing other artists, these are things that I love and find huge satisfaction in. So whether 10 people listen to me or 1,000 people listen to me, obviously I'd prefer it was 1,000. I'd prefer it was whatever. But it's really, the joy comes from the creation for me.
That's not, the number is not one of the critical success factors for your joy and sense of excitement.
No. It's like, it's lovely if anybody sends me some feedback and they like the song, and it's genuinely, it really is. But it's not the factor as to why I do it, because I know I'd create music even if there was no way to put it out there, but I could make it on my computer and play it at home. That's what I'd do.
So let's switch just a little bit. And what are your views on the impact on AI programs like Suno or things like that, where you can plug in a bunch of words and tell what style, and boom, you can have something that's tailored, customized, costs next to nothing. You can do something different every day. What are your current views on that?
It's a very tough one. I would say that the most important thing for me is honesty and labeling. Whether that's music, whether it's art, whether it's food, whatever it is, I always push that. I think I don't necessarily like barriers being put in the ways of things. I just want honesty and labeling. So, I mean, when I create music, I don't use AI as people know AI today, but because I'm creating music on a computer with a software program from Apple and stuff like that, there's still a hell of a lot of stuff being done that is not me playing a live instrument, and I can put my voice in there and I can shift the pitch of this and I can do, all these things that you can do that are tools to change it. AI is a different iteration because it can obviously just grab it, it can grab stuff from the internet and create a whole new song in a minute or seconds or whatever. So I think the downside to me is that the commercial platforms are likely to want AI songs, and some of them are even moving in that way clearly, because it means they can have music playing that they really don't have to pay anybody for.
Right.
Yeah. And their businesses. The one thing I do understand is business. If they can have music playing and people are listening to it and they don't have to pay royalties to somebody, then they're going to see that as a good thing. To me, it's always about, what is it? What are you listening to? Was it a human? Was it AI? Is it a combination of the two? And again, there's lots of places out there now that are starting to try to at least give some honesty and labeling. But again, that's tough. I put out music, it will sound like a real drummer. The stuff I do, I'm never working with a real drummer. It's
right.
I can set that up on my computer, and because it's not difficult. So I don't, in a way that's a shame, because a real drummer doesn't come into my house and whatever. In another way, that's not a shame, because I wouldn't bring a real drummer into the house and put my wife through that. So
they eat a lot. I understand.
They do. Yes.
Just, other things flipping through my mind, and how some things are cyclical. So, lately there's been a actually for quite a while, recurrence in vinyl, and people put in vinyl. And
Totally.
I remember when there was the first transition from analog to digital in terms of recording, and how cool that was. And now it seems to be for people that have really good ears, there's more richness that comes from an analog signal than from digital, to the point that now you're trying to get digital signals that mimic analog, right? To get
Yeah.
back to that experience. There's been so many transitions. It's incredible.
And if you want to just momentarily get a little bit technical, because my sound engineering background is one of the things about certain analog technology, whether that's valves in amps as opposed to transistors, going back, or digitized sound as opposed to an analog suite, is for some reason analog tends to throw up odd harmonics, sound nice to the ear, whereas digital can throw up even harmonics, which sound a little discordant. And I'm sure most of this, if you digitize stuff to a high enough resolution, most human ears are never going to tell the difference. But if it's not digitized to a high enough resolution, people with really good hearing will go, yeah, that doesn't sound as warm or as rich or as, And the other thing about vinyl, I think, is less that it's analog and more that it's a physical thing you hold in your hands.
Right.
And I will tell a story now, because this is a story that helped me. At the time, my wife and I had launched a print magazine, and we thought we were probably going to go broke. We were determined we weren't going to go broke, but it was sort of like, are we crazy? Everybody's saying do things digitally. And we had considered online businesses before we launched a print magazine. But a young man came around the house, a friend of a friend, whatever. We're feeding him. We're talking about stuff, talking about music, and he talks about his vinyl collection. And this is probably now, I don't know, 15 years ago or more. So, it wasn't, there wasn't quite the resurgence. And so I asked, why vinyl? And he said, look, and he held up a smartphone because, he says, I can listen to anything I want on this anytime. He says, but when I really want to listen to music, and then he mimed taking it out of the sleeve, putting it on the turntable, putting the needle on. It's the act.
Right.
And he was talking about, then he listens. He has committed. He's got the vinyl. He's got it out the sleeve. He's put it on the turntable, and he's got like 25 minutes or so to pay attention. Then he flips it over, Whereas when it's there all of the time, what's everybody talking about? The attention economy now. People don't pay attention when it's easily available.
So when you describe that, there's a couple of things I loved about that story, Phil. And one of them is that as you described it, I thought, okay, so there's a whole pile of our senses that get engaged. So our listening for sure, but also our sight, because
Yep.
the designs on album covers are incredible. The tactile feel of pulling it out, and maybe there's a sleeve inside, doing all that. So that's many senses, and sometimes even the smell, like the scent,
Yep.
we used to have some albums that they'd sit around for a while and they have kind of a moldy scent to them. It's not just the oldies and goldies, it's the oldies and moldies, right? But there's something about that, the focus, like you say. I just absolutely love just hearing you describe that.
And the other element for me, and this was something I always loved about vinyl albums, was if the inner sleeve had lyrics on it. Now, I've seen CDs where you can fold out a 20-page booklet and try and read tiny little lyrics, but I'm sorry, it's not the same. Whereas an album cover, you can put the lyrics on there. And I remember doing that. I didn't always want it to be, but often if it was a new album and, I'd put it on and I'd be scanning the lyrics while I was listening. So clearly the words and the lyrics were a big part to me as well. So there's the visual, the reading, the what the lyrics meant. I think they mean. That's the other thing, what I think they mean, and whilst the music is playing. So and to me, that's one of the reasons vinyl clearly has had the resurgence that it has, because yes, young people can get everything. We all can, but young people have grown up where everything is available on a phone in their pocket, everything basically. But if you really want to listen, there's nothing quite like putting something on the turntable and sitting there for 25 minutes and then turning it over. And what will you hear? You will hear stuff that you would never notice if it was just zooming past you, basically.
No, that's that is so cool. I might have to. No, if my wife hears me say this, I'll be in big trouble.
Well, you think about getting a vinyl collection?
And now there is the potential to be really annoying with vinyl collections, because thinking back to my university days, if someone was in residence, was away for the weekend and had done something that others found distasteful, you could kind of use a bishop's hook to get into the room. I realize people can't see what I'm doing on audio, and then take all of the records out and put them in different sleeves. Like that would just drive some people absolutely crazy. And you can't do that with the phone, right? You can't mess with those things. So there's opportunities lost with.
I know. I had a dear friend who would come round, and then he would just sit there while he was talking to me, and he'd slide vinyl out, move it, and put it in somewhere else. And he was doing it on purpose just to wind me up, because he knew my vinyl collection was ordered. You know what I mean? And so, and he was a dear friend, but he used to wind me up.
And I'm kind of wondering how many people out there listening to this either want to be or wish they could be a musician. And I've certainly been that way. Like when I was in school, and actually junior high, high school, university, I played trombone, which I loved, and then stopped. And then lately I've been getting on these kicks about, an ocarina. That's kind of neat. That's pretty, I could play that. So, you can also get a bass one. And you could get, so like I've got 6 ocarinas, Phil. They're sitting around. And then I thought, harmonicas. And then, chromatic, because they should be fairly easy to play. And then, so now I have about 4 or 5 harmonicas. And lately, what am I on to lately? Tin whistles.
There we go.
I've got some high quality tin whistles, but I never stick with it long enough. So I'm kind of caught in this. I love so many different kinds of music, love just getting immersed in it. And I also, at some level, want to be a musician, but I'm getting my way of doing that. So I'm just going to go back to simply appreciating it. There's one other thing that I'd like to explore in our in our time here that you put me on to. And that it was, say a little bit about the way that you're a group of people that distribute music in a different way, how all that came about. Because I think that feels like such a fabulous story of people looking at something that's not working for them and creating something that does. So maybe a little back. Now people are going, what the heck is he talking about? So I'll just leave it to you to describe what I heard from you that I was so caught up with.
Yeah, well, if whether you listen to music or whether you put out music yourself, you'll all be aware of the big streaming platforms. There's obviously Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple Music, YouTube Music, and then it goes on. Honestly, when I put out a single now, it's like there's like 20 streaming platforms you can take guess, and there's all these streaming platforms all over the world. Pretty much all of them are in one way or another owned by faceless corporations now. There was a great platform, and I'm not knocking it. It's called Bandcamp, that was around, and it seemed much more artist focused. But now it's owned by some investment group, and whatever. So again, it's the musicians and the artists can end up feeling just like cogs in the wheel. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to lay any great claim to this, but everybody who likes music should head over to subvert.fm.
And I'll make sure you put that in the program notes so people can go back to it. So could you just spell that out for us, please, Phil?
SUBVERT.FM. So Subvert FM is a new music platform that launched only a couple of weeks ago now. Had been in the works for a couple of years. And the thing that is completely different about it is a cooperative owned by the musicians who are on the platform. And that's just a fabulous concept in a world where Spotify, for example, used to pay me, 10, 20 cents or whatever when I got, 15 streams, whatever it was. Oh, hang on, stop that.
Spotify calling back. They've increased it to 25 cents.
They've complained. Most artists like me who don't have big numbers on Spotify decided it was just too costly to bother sending us small amounts. So now you get nothing if you're below a certain number of streams. So, and that's the vast majority of artists on Spotify now get absolutely nothing at all. Whereas before, they got a few cents here and a few cents there. I can see the logic, again, from a business perspective, but it doesn't make artists feel particularly valued, let's say. So to have something like Subvert, it's not a streaming platform yet. It is a place like Bandcamp where you can go, you can listen to music, you can find new music, you can choose to, if you want to purchase the music, to download it so it's yours, or you can just go there and listen, and that's free of charge. Or you could become a member, and when you're a member, a lot of the stuff, my music and many other artists' music, would then be free to you if you're a member of the cooperative. And I do love that. Cooperatives are hugely valuable, I believe, in capitalistic systems. They offer an alternative to straight corporations. And again, I'm not anti-corporation or whatever, but there are certain things where having a cooperative owned by the members just makes a lot of sense to me. And this is one where it definitely makes sense. So I released a single that was for a period of time exclusively on Subvert. I am I'm decided, going to start pulling my music from other platforms because, there comes a point where you got to get behind what you believe in.
Yeah, I was so incredible when you heard that. I'm a big fan of cooperatives, of cooperative movement, credit unions, and things like that. So that warmed my heart to hear about it. And especially when you're doing it because it's about producing it. It's not about having to get something back, and just the joy of giving.
Yes,
like, what a concept! If we could if we could eliminate greed and fear in our society, wow, how much different that would be. So. Before we go, Phil, I've really appreciated the conversation about music. I'd also like you to just say a little bit about what's one of your day jobs, your current one, and the other one that you just took on, just in case people want to come and visit and see you en person.
Okay. Well, I am now the market manager for the Penticton Farmers Market. And I've also taken on at the same time the market manager of the Naramata Farmers Market. So from a position where initially I wasn't doing it, I was an assistant at one for a while. I'm now manager of both, and I'm discovering that those two markets, it's kind of like a full-time job. So there isn't actually a lot of time for music, but I am still doing the music. But if you like a good busy market, if you like big crowds and loads of vendors and food trucks, come down to Penticton Farmers Market, downtown Penticton, close off numbers of streets. It's great. Lots going on. If you like something a bit more laid back, then Wednesday afternoons out in Naramata in a park by the beach, stroll around, enjoy yourself with the kids. That's what we're doing there. Yes.
So I'm going to make an assumption that the listenership for this podcast is all around the world. So Penticton is in the southern Okanagan Valley of the province of British Columbia in the country of Canada. So, come on over, come and visit the market, have that experience, and meet Phil. But hopefully, maybe when you, if you're driving and this podcast is over, to turn on some music and not distract too much from your driving, but really focus. Really listen to what's out there. We miss so much. It's kind of like I was about to bring this podcast to a close and diverting here, but it's kind of like that at any moment in time, the sound from literally hundreds of radio stations is out there.
Yeah.
Right. But in order to hear them, we have to tune in.
Yes.
Right. So, we can choose what to tune into, but tune into something. So,
yes.
Phil, thank you so much for being my guest, Phil. This has been a joyful conversation for me.
You,
I really appreciate it.
No, and just want to say to you, thank you for your dialogue groups all those years ago. You gave me wonderful help and connections, and has always been wonderfully generous. And so when you ask me this, yes, the answer is yes. I'll do this. What do you want, David? And if you make it down to Penticton, seriously, come and visit. And let us know you're going to be here. So it would be lovely to see you.
My commitment is to do that this summer, although this podcast may not come out to the fall, so it could be summer 20. Who knows? Anyhow, this has been David Gouthro, Discover Fresh Perspectives, having as my guest today, Phil Solman. Next week, the only thing I can guarantee is that there'll be a different guest with a different perspective on something, and I'll try to be a little more articulate in saying that next time. So thank you so much for being here today, and hope you can join us next week.
Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.